Next, we have the Midi piano roll. This is one of the most important contexts for Midi. And if you notice, it's very similar to the options in Midi note as we go through these. But the difference is that this decides what happens when we're over here, whereas Midi note decides what happens when we're inside the note. But the behavior and choices are pretty much the same. So let's start off with left click. By default, it's going to deselect all notes and move the edit cursor. So if we have some notes selected, like these, and we click over here, it deselects them and moves the edit cursor. But of course, we can change that. We could ignore snap. We could deselect all notes without moving the edit cursor, which is the default action while holding that option on the Mac or Alt on the PC. So if we have some notes selected, like these, and we just click over here, it deselects them, but it doesn't move our edit cursor, which is handy if the song is playing and we don't want it to reseek. We could just click over here and it deselects those notes without moving the edit cursor. We could insert notes right here, just insert, which is the default right over here with this modifier. And this is going to insert a note when we left click. So if we click right here, it inserts a note. And the length of the note that it inserts is based on the value right here. It's set to grid, but if we change it to 16th notes, it's going to insert 16th notes, like this. And they can ignore snap or leave other notes selected. So as we add notes, any selected notes will still be selected. We could set our draw channel lower or higher. Let me show you how this works. Let's put this back to default. And let's do it over here. Under Control or Start, we can set the draw channel lower. And over here, we'll set our draw channel higher. Down over here, we can see our Midi channel. We're in channel 1. If we switch to 2, we don't see our notes because all those notes were on channel 1. So when we're on 1, we can go over here and left click with that modifier and it switches to 16 because it went down 1. But if we add shift to it, it goes back up to channel 1. So we can go to each channel just by clicking. 2, 3, 4, and so on. And finally, we have our action list. And again, we could put anything there. Let's switch to left drag. And by default, it's going to insert note and drag to extend or change the pitch. So if we drag right here, it adds a note, and we can drag it out to change the length or move it down to change the pitch. So it's great for adding notes and adjusting them afterwards. But we can modify that. We could just insert notes. So when we drag, it's going to insert a note, but we can't really adjust it after the fact. It's set to 16th notes now, but we could change it here. Quarter notes, drag it, and we get the notes, but we can't adjust them. We could ignore snap, ignore vertical drag. So if we add a note by dragging, we can't change the note after the fact. We can still change the length, but if we go up and down, it doesn't let us change the note. So if we know we want to place the note right here, we can then adjust the duration, but not the pitch. We can drag to edit the velocity. So we grab it, the note's already decided, but we can go up and down to change the volume of the note or the velocity. Add another one. We can't change the length or the pitch, just the velocity. And finally, we could just drag to move. So it adds a note, and we could drag to move the note, but we can't change the length, velocity, but we can change the pitch. But that's just for inserting notes. We could also paint notes, which allows us to add many notes at once. Let's just paint notes. And if we grab it, we can paint many notes at once. but we can get more specific with that. We could ignore snap, make chords, just add them horizontally. So it makes a row of notes of all the same pitch, which is pretty useful for drum fills. Let's do a 16th note. And if we drag right here, it's going to make 16th notes, one after another. So this is going to be a drum fill right here. Do another one over here. But it keeps them all the same pitch. It won't go up or down. We could do it vertically. So we could paint notes up and down, but not side to side, or in a line. Which is great for doing piano rolls like this, or arpeggios. We could also erase notes, which is the default right here. Just drag right here, and we can erase the notes. Now, if you notice, this is pretty similar to what we did earlier with MIDI note, but the difference was we had to be in here to do it, where now we're going to be out here in the background, and that's the difference between MIDI note and MIDI piano roll. We can start on the background and drag over to delete. We could marquee select notes, which again is one of my favorites, to just select them. Let's reset this over here and put it on control. Just select. Now if we hold down control, we can marquee select our notes for deleting them or moving them. It's a great way of selecting notes by just surrounding them like this. And besides just selecting them, we could ignore snap, create a time selection at the same time, toggle a selection, or add to our selection. We could also just select time, hold on the modifier and drag. It'll make a time selection. We could select time, ignoring snap. We can scrub our MIDI so we can hear it as we scrub over it. Hold on the modifier and just scrub, and it'll play this MIDI as you roll past it. Great for previewing our MIDI notes, which is not set by default, so it's a good one to know. We could select touch notes, which again is similar to the MIDI note context, except we could select our notes from outside the note instead of from inside. You start here, hold on the modifier, and just touch the notes to select them. Or we can toggle them right here. Select them again to toggle them off. We could copy selected notes right here. So if these notes are selected, just start over here and drag, and it's going to copy those notes. And finally, we can move selected notes, which seems weird at first, because normally we move notes like this, from inside and just move it. But by doing it from this context, we can move it from the outside. Hold on the modifier and just move. I could be all the way over here and still move it. Or on this side. So it's pretty powerful. And finally, we have double click. This is what happens when we double click in that empty space. By default, it's going to insert a note right here. So if we double click over here, it puts in a note. And again, we can change that note to quarter notes right here, or anything we want. Whole notes, just by double clicking. But if you don't want that behavior, just change it. So we can change it to an action right here. And we can put a different action or custom action to any of these modifiers, because none of them are being used. So it's a great place to add some extra actions. So that's the MIDI piano roll. And finally, we have the MIDI editor, which only works with right drag right here. And all these options can all be seen. Marquee select notes, add notes, toggle notes. So they're all set up. If we double click them, we can change them. But for the most part, they're all available to us. But it's a good idea to check them out anyway, see what they do, and change them to the way you want to work. So anyway, that's the MIDI contexts for the mouse modifiers in Reaper. Next, we're going to check out the arrange view contexts for mouse modifiers. Let's go.